Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very nice to see you. I'm Andrew Nunn. I'm the Dean here. And we were delighted when Bankside residents asked if they could organise a Hustings here in the Cathedral in preparation for our elections on the 3rd of May. And it's good that we've got the leaders of the four parties with us. Amir, who's the chair of Bankside Residents, will do the proper introductions of our guests in just a moment. But it's good that you're in this place. We've been here rather a long time in Bankside, and we intend to be here a lot longer. As some of you know, we're probably around the year 606 that the first church was built on the site, a place where there had been Roman villas and this, that and the other. And from that early beginnings in 606, it developed into a priory. The friars here established St Thomas's Hospital, and they were much involved in the local community and everything around this place. Not huge involvements in politics, although there was a sermon preached here by the Reverend Henry Sacheverell, which caused the Whig government to collapse. That's the kind of sermon I'd really like to go to preach. But we believe that it's very important that the church enables the community in lots of different ways to actually create community as well. And that's why we're always delighted to work with community groups in trying to further the needs of the community, and particularly in this area where so much has happened, so many changes which affect the lives of those of us, and I include myself, who live in this area. Lots of good things and lots of challenges, and I'm sure some of all of that will come out in what you say in a moment. But I'm going to hand over now to Amir, and Amir can take us through the process for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me loud and clear? Yes? Excellent. Right, so good evening to everybody. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the introductions. I'm going to start quickly and get on with the questions and the answers. So with us today we have Councillor Al-Samerai, who will be restanding, and the leader of the Liberal Democrats. We have Eleanor Margolies, who is the co-chair of the Southwark Green Party. We have Councillor Peter John, who is the leader of the local Labour Party and the leader of council currently, and we have the former leader of the Conservative Party, Toby Eckersley. So, we'll begin with the first question, and I'd like to call up, we'll start off first with opening statements from each of the candidates, so there'll be 2.5 minutes each, and we'll start with Peter.
Thank you very much, Amir, and thank you very much, Andrew, to everyone who's helped organise this evening. The Labour Party has been running Southwark since 2010, and we are seeking your support to continue to run this local authority after May the 3rd. And we're doing so because we believe since 2010 that we've kept our promises that we made to the public. In our manifestos for both 2010 and 2014, we set out some ambitious proposals, including introducing free healthy school meals for all primary school children. At the last election, we introduced free swim and gym for all residents. And we have been a council which has dealt with the challenges of austerity, we think, as well as any other, without cutting frontline services, without closing libraries, and maintaining high-quality services for all of our residents. And as we look to May the 3rd and what we might do, I hope many of you will have seen our manifesto either online or a copy has come through your door. But we set out our ambitions and our values. Our ambition is to see a full employment borough. Since 2010, more than 40,000 jobs have been created in our borough. That's good news for those who had not been in work previously. Since 2014, we have created 5,000 new jobs as a council, had a real hand in delivering those new jobs. and nearly 2,000 new apprenticeships. And we reaffirm that commitment going forward with another 5,000 jobs that we as a council will help create and 3,000 apprenticeships that we will help to deliver. We want everyone to have the best start in life. That's why we're going to extend free healthy school meals to nursery schools going forward. But we're also conscious of the challenges that our communities face and the challenges our environment faces. That's why, for instance, one of our pledges is to end the use of single-use plastics as a council and as across our borough going forward. So we think our manifesto sets out a bold and ambitious plan. We'll carry on delivering our 11,000 new council homes, the highest quality housing which our residents, whatever your background, deliver to live in. So we think we have an ambitious manifesto, bold policies, and we look for your public support on May the 3rd.
And now I'll give it to Eleanor.
Hello, I'm Eleanor. I'm co-chair of Southwark Green Party with Phil, who's here. We do have co-chairs like the National Party with Caroline Lucas and Jonathan Bartley, which means a lot of conversation all the time. I got involved through local activism. I'm also standing as a candidate in St Giles. I got involved through trying to do practical things like solving problems like recycling. I want to tell you briefly about two areas that the Green Party is working on housing. On housing, I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I believe in the 3 R's: repair, refurbish and remain. Repair means good quality local repairs for council tenants. And refurbish means making all the properties in the borough, both council-owned and privately owned, really energy efficient. Proper insulation to reduce bills and cut the carbon bill for the whole borough. Efficient heating systems, solar panels to generate electricity. And remain, keeping communities together so they can support each other. The Green Party completely opposes the selling off of public goods for private gain, as has happened on the Aylesbury and the Haygate estates. Remain means rent controls, so young people are not shunted from one unaffordable property to the next with no security. And it means new ways to build homes, so the next generation can remain in Southwark. We're also campaigning for the health of people in Southwark. We've been working on air pollution for a long time, since we've triggered the first full council debate on air pollution in 2011 through a petition. We've put up air pollution monitors near schools and community areas. Out of 20 monitors, 18 were at illegal levels. If you go to McDonald's at Camberwell, the nitrogen dioxide levels are more than twice the legal limit. Where thousands of people are passing every day to change buses to go to King's College Hospital. And Southwark Council, I'm afraid Southwark Labour, is simply not doing anything like enough. According to Southwark's own monitoring report, published in January this year, nitrogen dioxide pollution has increased every year since 2014. Southwark Council has the power to take more action to protect our homes and our health. And Southwark needs brave politicians who will listen to the public and say, yes, we will take action now for the common good.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Amir, and to Andrew for hosting, and thank you all very much for coming along. Local politics is really important. It really matters about who's elected on the 3rd of May, and it's a real pleasure to see so many people here this evening. My name is Councillor Anoud Al-Samerai. I've been a councillor in Southwark for 10 years and the leader of the Liberal Democrat Council Group for 8. My family and I came to Southwark when I was 9 years old. We came very suddenly as a result of the First Gulf War, and we were literally homeless, and we ended up in Southwark, and Southwark became our home. And it's one of the most amazing things I think about Southwark and London, that it's home to so many people from so many different backgrounds who want to give so much to the community and to make it an even better place to live. And I love London, I love Southwark, I think it's open, it's diverse, it's innovative, it's exciting, but it doesn't currently work for everyone. We face real challenges around issues particularly to do with housing. It's the number one issue in my advice surgery every single week. We face challenges around crime, and we've seen a real increase in crime over the last year in London. And we've also got huge environmental challenges about what we do for the future and how we make our air cleaner to breathe right now. There are lots of things that actually all the politicians along here agree about, but it's really important that we have debate and we air the issues where we disagree, and certainly housing, I think, is one area where I think the council has really failed, and I'm sure we'll have questions on that later. But Liberal Democrats are putting forward a real radical vision for housing in this borough. We want to get the 6,000 empty homes back into use. We want a new model of housing that actually bases your rents on your income rather than what the market rent is offering. And we want to stop selling off council homes needlessly, something we've seen happen far too often over the last 8 years. I mentioned crime, and again, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but we want to invest council money in extra police officers. Other boroughs do this. In the budget this year, we found £4 million of waste that could be used for things like extra police services and investing in youth work, which would make a real difference. So there's some of the policies that we've got in our manifesto. I just think, finally, for me as a Liberal, the most important value I have is about where power lies. So I don't think all power should lie with the markets and business, like some of the Conservatives do, and I don't think it should all lie with the state and the council. I think power should lie with individuals and communities, the people who give up their time coming along to meetings like this, and that's what we want to see Southwark Council in the future.
Thank you. Yes, I was first became Leader of the Opposition in 1979, and I did 33 years as a councillor representing Dulwich. I'm actually standing for London Bridge and West Bermondsey Ward. It would be a big surprise if I won, but because of that, it might be necessary to pay some attention to what our small group might do, particularly if there are any coalition negotiations and so forth. So it's not idle to ask a Conservative in Southwark to express some views. The current group leader is busy campaigning in Dulwich because it's so important that our two members retain at least their seats down there to get the diversity from our point of view within the borough. I just mentioned three things why we would be distinctly different, I think, from the other parties. One would be obviously continuing what I did, I think, fairly effectively, which was always to argue for a lower council tax, and in fact was able to achieve part of that in coalition with the Lib Dems between 2002 and 2006. We would operate a more balanced highway policy. It's all very well promoting exclusively walking and cycling, but when one of the results of that is traffic jams, particularly down Jamaica Road, for example, caused by such measures, which in turn cause pollution, then we would have a more balanced approach to that if we possibly could in conjunction with Transport for London. And I think the Lib Dems agree with us on this one, and that is that we should restore powers to the community councils. And we should try to mesh in that with the development of neighbourhood plans and neighbourhood forums in accordance with the Localism Act 2011, one of David Cameron's big society ideas, I guess. There is work on that. We must make the powers of the community council genuine so that the public can make representations to their local councillors and see them in action, balancing the considerations which any responsible elected person and official should exercise. It's a balance, and it's very important for people to see that. Thank you.
Now we'll go on to the first question. So if I can have Janine, please. Janine here? Hi. Just a second.
My name's Janine Rowe and I'm a resident from the Old Kent Road, and my question to the panel is about tall buildings. The council is proposing in the new Southwark plan to allow developments including tall buildings without height restrictions anywhere in the borough. Already this is leading to a rash of proposals for many tall buildings, including mega towers up to 48 stories high. How will this, particularly in the Old Kent Road opportunity area, help in solving Southwark's housing crisis, when the majority of the homes provided will not be affordable to local people?
Thank you very much for your question. The new Southwark Plan and the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan are very much on the mind of the Greens, and we've been working a lot with community groups that have been working on them. Indeed, the new Southwark Plan, although it's not been adopted, it's still got to be seen by the inspector, is already affecting planning applications in a negative way, and so is the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan. We've got evidence that because developers and landowners believe that that is what's going to be adopted, they're already putting up the rents for the current small industrial uses and driving out those businesses because they assume that it will be turned into residential land. So we would like to see the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan taken back to the option stage and really... In saying this, we're only just listening to the advice of the 800 traders, businesses there that are responsible for about 10,000 jobs. We would like the advice of the London Plan, which argues for no net loss of industrial space. We would like that to be taken up by Southwark. It's in the London Plan. It's really important because it means that you can work near home, you can walk to good jobs, and that's what a really lively, integrated community is, about having work and jobs close together.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Janine, for your question. I think the premise is slightly mistaken when you say that the majority of the homes provided will not be affordable. The approach that will be taken on the Old Kent Road is that all applications will need to be policy compliant, and we will be looking to the Old Kent Road to help us deliver those 11,000 new council homes that we have committed to delivering over what remains to be a 26-year period. So I think there will be very many affordable homes. And why are we looking at the Old Kent Road as a place for new housing? Well, you know, London has a housing crisis, and unless we begin to tackle it in places like Southwark, we will not solve that housing crisis. And those 20,000 new homes, and indeed 10,000 new jobs, which will be policy compliant with the London Plan because there is no proposal to lose business space on the Old Kent Road, will help us deliver improved transport infrastructure, including a new Bakerloo line extension. For too long, our part of the world has been cut off from the underground, and I think it was a great achievement for us to have persuaded successive mayors that the Bakerloo line needs to be extended from the Elephant and Castle down to Lewisham. I believe that is good news, but we can only do it if there is a contribution from what is developed in the area. So I think that these are bold plans. I know that there is some disquiet and some concern, but the belief that this means that businesses will have to leave the area is wrong. This is an approach which means that businesses will stay in the Old Kent Road, and it will be compliant, as I say, with the London Plan. This means more people working in the Old Kent Road, not fewer, more businesses, not fewer, getting more of our residents into jobs, providing the genuinely affordable homes that our borough needs.
What do you say to the question that Janine's put in terms of the tall buildings? Will it mean that tall buildings will be allowed anywhere in the borough?
No, it doesn't mean that tall buildings are allowed anywhere in the borough. We've had a Southwark plan historically which identifies areas which are suitable for tall buildings, and the London Bridge area, for instance, is one of those areas which has been identified. And it will continue to be the case that if a development comes forward with tall buildings, and they are identified again on the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan as areas which are particularly appropriate, and that will be around the new transport nodes. So this is not a free-for-all in terms of tall buildings. The Old Kent Road Area Action Plan, as currently drafted, limits the areas where those tall buildings and super tall buildings can come.
And is that the same in the new Southwark plan?
I believe it is, because the area action plans for those individual areas obviously have to work in conjunction with the new Southwark plan. But, you know, we have seen more tall buildings coming into the borough, but that's not what absolutely drives us. What drives us is delivering the homes and the jobs that people need. And I'm absolutely alive to the fact that people are concerned that not enough of the new homes that are delivered are genuinely affordable. That is something obviously we need to address, but we can't solve that in Southwark alone. We need to solve that across London. We need 60,000 homes in London each year. At the moment, we're building about 20,000. There is a supply problem and we need to address that.
Let's take some questions. Does anyone want to add any comments or any questions from the audience? Yes, the lady over there.
Hello, my name is Prudence. You're talking about affordable, but the properties, the new builds are not affordable. And the people who are living in the estate, I'm from Aylesbury Estate, yeah? And they are driving all the leaseholders and the tenants away. Secure tenants are being discarded and given a short-hold tenancy in a new build, which is leaking. Last week we went round with the inspector.
Okay. Can you sum up the question, please?
The affordable is not affordable. And what they are offering is like the private owners are selling the properties abroad, and the people living in the estate are being moved away.
Okay.
So,
and the original question, please.
Thanks very much for both questions. It's really terrifying that regeneration has become such a dirty word. People are now scared of regeneration in the borough because it doesn't benefit the people who live here and work here already. And it absolutely should. And the key to it is to improve lives for people who live here, and it's not happening. And I think, you know, Peter can quote all the stats he wants of us, but the evidence is there where we are seeing people priced out of the communities that they have grown up in, that they've lived here all their lives. And for me, the basic principle of regeneration development is that it should be done with residents, not to residents. And sadly, we've seen a council that spends so much time with the developers. I mean, the town hall in Toby Street is like a revolving door of developers after developers. And sadly, that's who the councillors and the council officers are listening to, not residents.
I'm just asking you to answer the question. In terms of the tall buildings
Absolutely.
and the homes, what would you do to ensure that they're genuinely affordable homes, and what do you say to Janine?
So I think the tall buildings is a really interesting question, because lots of people actually say to me, what's the problem with tall buildings if it gets you lots more homes? And there are, you know, there's interesting debates to be had about tall buildings. Lots of people don't like them because they fundamentally change the character of an area. In my ward in Bermondsey, it's pretty low rise, and we've got the plans for the biscuit factory there of a 28-storey tower surrounded by 10-storey towers, much higher than anything local. And people rightly think that will affect the character of the area, the light, the wind tunnelling you get, you know, so there's a real impact on the amenity of an area. It's also about where people want to live. Actually, people don't want to live necessarily in tall high-rise, and actually, often those towers are built, as people have said, to be sold as luxury flats abroad. Basically, not even for people to live in, just for people to a safe place for them to keep their money. And we have the evidence of that. Over the last just talking about tall buildings, over the last 2 years, 1 in 4 new homes in Southwark has been sold abroad. That is a scandal when we have thousands of people desperate for housing. So when the Liberal Democrats ran the council, we had a policy where they were in certain zones where there were other tall buildings. I think what the change in the new Southwark plan does is it puts officers in a really difficult position, because it's very difficult now to say no to tall buildings. And actually, we ought to be able to say no to tall buildings if the community doesn't want them. I think the other...
How do you ensure the genuinely affordable strategy?
So one of the things, again, from when we ran the council, there's a development called Bermondsey Spa, which is around the Tesco's on Jamaica Road, which is in my ward. And there the makeup was a third social rents, a third intermediate, shared ownership at that time, and a third private. So about 100 council homes were demolished, but 300 homes at council rents were replaced, plus more for people on intermediate incomes. And that for me seems to be the answer, that we need mixed communities. If you're demolishing, you absolutely need to replace as many or if not more at council rents. But you also need to create flats and homes for people who are on incomes of sort of 0 to 60,000, because actually a joint household income of 60,000 in London doesn't get you very much. And so we're actually saying we need to look at all incomes. We need to build council homes, we need to stop selling them off and demolishing them, which is what's happening at the moment, but most importantly, we need to create mixed communities, because that's what we all love about Southwark in the first place, and that's what has been destroyed by this Labour Council over the last 8 years.
Yeah.
I just want to, just to the candidates, if you could be brief in your answers and try to answer the question more succinctly, that would be great, please. Toby.
Yeah.
I know. Toby.
I'll deal with the questions from the Aylesbury people first. Some of the people who were there with the questioner and their banners may have been part of the deputation to the Council's Cabinet on the 9th of May last year, at which I supported them. I also suggested to Peter John on my left that the Council reviews the future of the Aylesbury estate. I will tend to favour a solution as put forward by the Green leader, Eleanor, Margolies, further to my left. They are valuable municipal assets, what remains of the Aylesbury estate, which is still about 3/4 of it, and the property owners there, the leaseholders, whom I've particularly supported, need better treatment. There's been some improvement under Labour, largely pushed by the Aylesbury leaseholders, but it's not satisfactory, and it is a waste of resources. The estate, I think, should be rehabilitated. But obviously, we need to do reports on that.
Can you just answer the question in terms of, I know you've answered the question in terms of the Aylesbury.
Yes.
What do you say to the tall building?
You've anticipated that very moment. If you say your question, would push us on. Tall buildings, my comment on the Old Kent Road Area Action Plan made about 6 points. The first one was which there are too many tall buildings too close together. 20,000 new dwellings in that area is actually incompatible, in my view, with good residential amenity. We do need to build more housing there, definitely. Also, I'm very concerned about the fire risk in tall buildings which only have one staircase.
How would you ensure genuinely affordable homes? What's the Conservative policy?
Well, our policy is to have quite a wide definition of affordable.
Genuinely affordable.
Genuinely affordable is in line with the Conservative policy, which has a wide range. I'm not in favour of destroying socially rented homes on the Aylesbury. I've just said that. So I favour a wide range of pricing within the affordable spectrum.
Thank you very much. Right, we will take... Yes. Go for it.
Just to deal quickly with the question about the new Southwark plan and the permission that it gives to build tall towers. Peter may not be aware of what happened in Camberwell, where the area plan actually had added to it a line about permitting high buildings. So it's not just about London Bridge. That would be tall towers built around Burgess Park, and it would be very difficult indeed to reject that within planning once this kind of quite vague and open phrase about tall buildings would be fitted. The second point I wanted to mention was coming back to what Peter said about the towers on the Old Kent Road helping to deliver the underground. Yeah, well, I think we absolutely need to separate it out. We plan for public transport for the whole city. We do not do it by expecting developers to subsidise public transport. And there are other ways to build, to invest in housing. I was very lucky to go to Community Land Trust last year in St Clements. That's a way to link the sale of property to income rather than rental pricing. Sorry.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on, sorry. You're going to have an opportunity to say something on housing in a minute. Is Claire here? Claire? No? Right, I'll read out her question. So she's talking similarly about tall buildings, and she mentions that a lot of major developments are densely populated, and sometimes it feels that planning decisions are made behind closed doors, and that she feels the majority of properties that are being built are extortionately priced and built again for foreign investors, and she feels, you know, what can the council do? What would the candidates do to ensure, what strategy would they use to ensure that you see the genuinely affordable homes, the council homes, but also the other range of homes, but particularly the council homes, as there is a large waiting list in Southwark. Peter.
Thanks, Amir. And I mean, I think, you know, we have a commitment in Southwark to build 11,000 council homes over a 30-year period. We've delivered 535 of those over this 4-year period. And some of those homes are, all of those homes are of high quality, some exceptional quality. And I'm really proud of the fact that we're delivering such high quality council housing let at council rent and owned by the council going forward. And even now, our plans are the most ambitious of any council in the country, bar none. So there is an absolute place for council housing as the answer to where we get genuinely affordable housing. It requires us to we have to be pretty innovative in terms of where these homes are going to go. We have to go through very long consultations in order to ensure that they are being delivered, and that's absolutely right and proper. But I think, you know, it is absolutely vital. If you look at the figures for homes delivered over the last few decades, in 1969, this country built 400,000 homes, of which nearly 200,000 were council homes. And we carried on as a country building tens of thousands of council homes up until 1983. And in 1983, it was a Tory government under Mrs. Thatcher which really ended councils building council homes. And we didn't feel the impact of it immediately, but we are now feeling the impact of it. Because that, you know, the fact that we have not built council housing, last year we got something like 1,500 new council homes across the country. You know, the fact we've not been building council housing has stored up a massive problem for us to try and sort out now. And we're never going to solve the housing crisis unless and until government says that council housing has to be a priority. And it's quite interesting to see in the budget last November, there was obviously an argument going on between the Community Secretary, Sajid Javid, and the Chancellor about putting £50 billion into house building.
So given the barriers that there are, especially with the cap on borrowing for councils, when you talk about innovation, what do you mean by innovation? What are you going to do that's going to be radical? What are the candidates here going to do are going to be radical to ensure that those council homes are built, given the circumstances that we're in?
Well, we are using, I mean, in some instances we are using affordable housing contributions from developments in order to maximise the number of new homes that are being delivered in parts of the borough. In other instances we are using what borrowing we can, and in other instances we do have a housing delivery vehicle which is set up, which is arm's length from the council, but which will be able to borrow and build against our assets, which will carry on building. But in truth, the answer is easy. It is government to change the borrowing rules that limit what we can do. Because as I say, we can't solve all London's housing problems here in Southwark. We're doing our bit and we're doing our best. We have a proud record of delivery. But it has to be a London-wide solution, and that can only be enabled by government.
Thanks.
If you can just answer on Claire's question, which says, she feels that decisions are made behind closed doors. And I'll come back to Peter on that, if you can answer. Thank you.
Yeah, as Claire's question asked about the empty properties, the scandal of this rent to leave, the tall buildings that are empty. And I think this model is really broken, the idea that we can get developers to build in the north. They build empty towers that it's better for them to leave empty, which is just a scandal from an environmental and a political and human point of view. And the idea that instead of insisting that they build truly affordable housing within those developments, that they pay a subsidy that then allows council homes to be squeezed in elsewhere in the borough, it just doesn't work. We should be thinking about, Luke spoke about the 6,000 empty properties. I'm thinking particularly about something I go by very often, which is a building on Wyndham Road, on Camberwell, Walworth Road, that has been an empty skeleton of unfinished concrete for 18 months since the developer went bust and the workers down tools because they weren't being paid. The council could use its CPO powers, its compulsory purchase powers, to buy that and hand it over to people who are prepared to put their own sweat equity, their own work in for housing co-ops, to build their own homes, to design them so that they really suit them for a lifetime. There are lots of models. If we look beyond Southwark, if we look, for example, to Lewisham has got a very interesting self-build co-op starting there. If we look beyond that to Freiburg, there's lots more that we could do.
Thanks very much to Claire for her question. I think it's dangerous if we start blaming government for problems, because actually we're all standing in local elections and we believe in local government and that solutions should lie with communities. So I think we have to look at ourselves about how we tackle the housing crisis. And I'm afraid I strongly believe that our Labour Council has made the housing crisis worse over the last 8 years. I think they may have had very good intentions, but they've pursued a policy which, just to explain, and Peter's been very open about this, it's to allow developers to build whatever they want, 100% luxury flats, and to take the money and build council homes elsewhere. The problem with that policy is you destroy the principle of mixed communities because you have your luxury flats in one place and your council housing in other places, so you segregate. It's actually really unjust because the people who live on existing estates have to have the housing squeezed onto their green spaces and garages, and yet they see these tall towers being built and know that never in a million years will they be able to afford to live in one. So it's unjust as well as destroying mixed communities. And finally, it's too slow. What happens is those towers get built, they get sold off abroad, rents go up because we've got more housing at luxury levels, and the delay on building council homes we know all too well. I mean, Peter talks about 500 properties being built. Actually, my figures say, in terms of permanent council homes built since 2010, it's less than 200. And in terms of council homes sold and demolished since 2010, it's 2,800. So less than 200 built, more than 2,000 sold or demolished, and we're going backwards. And whatever the figures, Peter, you can't deny it's going backwards because of the sale and demolitions. So I do think we have to change the policy radically. I think we have to be tough on developers, not going off to dinner with them, but actually saying no at planning committee when we need to. When the Liberal Democrats in Southwark talk about genuinely affordable, we think it should be based on your income. So we have council rents, and people who are entitled to council housing should get those. But we also need to say that people in the middle need rents they can actually afford. And for most people, they should not be spending more than a third of their income on rent. That would be genuinely affordable. It's not about what average incomes are, it's not about what market rents are, it's about what you personally can afford. That's what's genuinely affordable to you. And just, sorry, Amir, housing is so important and I feel so strongly about it. 6,000 empty homes sitting in this borough. In Southwark, it takes 4 months to re-let a council property. In Town Hamlets, it takes 3 weeks. Basic things to get hundreds of council homes back into use. If you've got the will, you can make a difference locally. And that's why we need a council that hasn't been hanging around for 8 years, that's actually got some fresh ideas and some passion and wants to solve the housing crisis here in Southwark.
Thank you. The fundamental situation at the moment is that private buyers are subsidising the affordable housing that is being provided. That's not enough, but that's the cross-subsidy, and that is something which needs to be built on, but there must be limits to that. and because at some point we've got to consider the housing for young people who are not on housing waiting lists and do not aspire to council housing. It's their wish to try and get on the housing ladder. If they are squeezed out by excessive subsidies which they are paying to those who will enjoy the affordable housing, that can't go on forever. The current situation basically with the council is that 35% affordable housing is required, 70% of which should be social rented housing, i.e. rents very near council levels. I don't really see what's wrong with that. What I do object to, and I've said this twice already, is pulling down existing council estates at council rents. That is a really pointless exercise. I also think we need to be tougher with developers in respect of their viability assessments. I think that's coming along. The government's got a consultation paper out on that at the moment, and we also need to consider the use of planning powers to stop excessive purchases by overseas buyers just for investment purposes, if they leave them empty. I don't think it's impossible to use planning powers. It needs to be looked into.
Thank you very much. Right, we will move on now to, I'm going to take two questions at the same time. And when I do ask that you sum up, please do sum up, because we don't have much time. So, if I could take both Nick's and Ken's question together. So Nick first and then Ken, please. Is Nick here?
What plans do you have to mitigate the effects of antisocial behaviour in Bankside, Riverside and other parts of the borough where the nighttime economy is evolving?
Thank you. And if I could take Ken's question at the same time, please. Is Ken?
Hello, I'm Ken. I run a retail business along the river. The riverside has attracted a lot of buskers, and they mostly use amplifiers. Busking in London has recommended their voice shouldn't travel, or sound shouldn't travel more than 30 meters. Will the council leaders support a ban on use of amplifiers, and also a ban on busking within 30 meters to residents and local businesses?
Thank you.
The answer to those last two questions is yes. And the answer to antisocial behaviour is, I can convenient to say that our alternative proposals, particularly proposed by Councillor Michael Mitchell, are that the council should take up the Metropolitan Police's opportunity to buy in extra police. Now, the council may be doing that to a limited extent, but these police need to be targeted to the solution of the problems which local businesses and local people identify. Further south in the borough, it may well be more serious, knife crime and gangs. Antisocial behaviour, of course, very important. So, one of our solutions, quite small, but would be to buy in, paying council tax money, to buy in extra police from the Metropolitan Police Service, and we locally should have some control over that to get their activities targeted to the sort of nuisance which the questioner referred to.
Thank you very much. To Eleanor, please.
Ken, your question about amplifiers, it's slightly ironic to be answering it through an amplified speaker, but yes, would you like to hear? No, you do not want to hear. Thank you. Within 30 metres of homes and businesses, and I think London Underground has got a really good scheme that has worked very well in the last few years of auditioning for spots, and that's encouraged a kind of real quality in busking, and it's something that should be negotiable, that it adds to the richness of some areas, but definitely to have some control on sound. It's to do with the noise team being able to be responsive and work with people. In terms of the mitigating antisocial behaviour, a lot of the problems I think come from the kind of industrialised drinking and eating places that are sort of churning people through, encouraging people to drink an awful lot through sort of special offers on drinks, and that there's partly a place for investment in more police, but there's also a place for looking at the whole balance of a high street. So in some areas that's to do with thinking about getting rid of fried chicken shops and thinking about a more balanced kind of high street. And in sociable areas around Borough, that might be just like looking at the mix of what's available.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Nick. I mean, we have, you know, it's one of those subjects where I think we have made some improvements, particularly on noise nuisance. We said in 2014 we're taking an absolute zero tolerance approach to noise nuisance, and we have beefed up the powers that our enforcement officers are now able to exercise, and they're able to go and knock on doors and say, turn that music down, without having to go into somebody's home and listen to what the impact is if they think there is a noise nuisance. So we've done that. We've continued to support the fact that we have wardens in our borough, despite the fact we've had to take so much money out of our budgets since 2010. And we do recognise, absolutely, that antisocial behaviour continues to be a real problem that blights too many people's lives. And so, absolutely, as a council, we will carry on doing everything that we can, and we've always resisted any suggestion that we don't carry on providing that vital service to people as we've looked at our budgets, even though it's incredibly difficult sometimes to make these things balance. And we recognise absolutely that there is a nighttime economy evolving in this part of the world. We have in the past invested in police, particularly for the nighttime economy parts of the borough on the match funding scheme. But I don't think at a time when we've had to have 40% taken out of our budgets that we should be effectively then having to pay into the police for the job I think that the police should do when it's more serious crime which is being committed across our borough and our city. We work closely with the police and we try and sort problems out obviously as we can. Ken, your question about buses is really interesting. I know that there is a review going on at the moment which is due to report in June, particularly about the hotspot in your part of the borough. We look forward to what the conclusions are, because I know and understand we had a deputation came to Council Assembly just last month about how frustrated people are with the noise that's coming from buskers, and it is something we will look at. And hopefully that review will give us all a positive platform to take forward and put in some sensible policies which mean that your lives are not blighted, your business is not blighted by buskers, which for some people are very entertaining and make this part of the world, you know, a great place to come to. We don't want to lose everything, you know, out of the joy that that brings, but also we don't want to lose the joy of your lives and your businesses.
Thank you. Before I come to Amir, I just want to ask if the questioners want to add anything. Ken or Nick?
I'd just like to direct this directly at Peter, because all of the things you said have been tried and have failed.
Is there a question?
So I'll go back to my original question. What are you going to do now to mitigate the effects, given that everything you just outlined has failed?
Ken, do you want to come back? No?
Peter, yes, Peter Bankside is planning for a meeting, and then so I hope the conclusion of the meeting will be accepted by the council, which is very likely to be banning amplifiers. That's what I would like to let you guys know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that one, I don't want to preempt the meeting, because there's no point having a review and a meeting if I sit here and say something which then, you know, it's better that we look at the review and the paperwork that comes forward. And Nick, we've had this conversation, haven't we? I can't, you know, it's probably over 8 years that we've had this conversation, and it's incredibly frustrating. You know, we've talked about, haven't we, having gates and and what other measures can we take to make life tolerable for residents of Montague Close, and we will look again. And I know you emailed me yesterday, I think it was, raising similar issues. So let me look at it again. It's not lost on us at all. You know, we have tried to look at things, we have tried to look at ways of exploring ways in which to solve the problem that affects your life, and I'll take it away again today. That's what I promised to do.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Amir. As I said at the beginning, sort of crime and antisocial behaviour has definitely risen up my inbox over the last year or so. It's something that is also in the media, and it's important to remember violent crime has gone up. Actually, people are genuinely very anxious about a lot of the knife crime, the acid attacks, and obviously we've had terror attacks very close to here. So I think people are rightly worried about crime and antisocial behaviour, and it's right that politicians should be doing something and coming up with ideas. I just have three very short, Amir will be pleased to hear, answers about what to do. The first is you need really strong ward councillors on these, particularly some of the licensing issues, and Liberal Democrat councillors are passionate about being local champions. And actually, I know in this ward, Adele and David and Maria, and in my ward in Shad Thames, me and my colleagues spend a lot of time working, representing residents at licensing committees, making representations, really trying to get conditions in place around hours, around deliveries, around the kind of very practical things that can make a real difference. On the busking example, I know the ward councillors have been very active at pushing that ban on application, and I hope the council will listen. The second thing is about police officers on our streets. As I said earlier, we've got to find solutions in our own communities. It's no good blaming the mayor for closing front counters or cutting police officers, or the government for cutting funding. The council has money, and the council can make choices about how it spends that money. The council decided to give £1 million to the Tate Modern, a choice the council makes. I would rather spend that money on extra police officers on our streets. Similarly with youth services, which I think is the third area that we really need to invest in if we're going to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour. Young people are most likely to be victims of crime, and we have a responsibility to look after young people in our communities. And therefore, Liberal Democrat manifesto is very clear that we need to invest in youth services, in youth work, in youth centres, in mentoring, in outreach, in actually getting out there and supporting young people.
Nick specifically talking about nighttime economy. I know you're talking about young people. So in terms of nighttime economy, what would you do? Is it just, are you talking about extra police officers? Is that the case?
Absolutely. I think one of the advantages about the council actually funding extra police officers is we can then say where they should be focused and what they should be doing. So actually focusing on nighttime economy, and I know some of the local business improvement districts have done that over the years. So absolutely, it's about the council saying this is what's important to our residents. It's about local communities coming up with the challenges, people coming to meetings and saying, look, this is where the challenge is in my area, and the council directing resource to help with that. I was just going to make another youth service point, just because I do think it's important about money and choices.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
I'll hold on to it for later.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on to a question from, well, there's two questions on a similar issue, but we'll start with Tim, please. He's right in front of you.
I've got a question from the members of the Bankside Neighbourhood Forum, Bankside Open Spaces Trust, Bankside Residents Forum, and the Coin Street Community Builders. For the last 6 years, we've been trying to produce a neighbourhood plan for Bankside. When we carried out an extensive consultation, it was clear that the most important element of the plan was a community infrastructure project list. Projects that would be delivered with a 25% of SIL collected from the local developments. These projects go some way to mitigate against the impact of these developments. Can the candidates pledge that these projects will be decided and prioritised locally by ward, and furthermore procured and delivered by local experienced agencies where these exist?
Thank you. And if I can ask, I think it's Janet. Is Janet here? Would like to add on to that?
My name is Janet Morris, and I live in Bermondsey. I've been there for nearly 30 years, and thank you, Tim, for covering some of the things that I want to just mention. The SIL, Community Infrastructure Levy, was effective in 2015. As far as I'm aware, there was no process for allocating the 25%. 100% community portion until the end of last year. It's then been delegated down to community councils, and in my community council, Bermondsey and Rotherhithe, we've been wrestling with this, and I would say that I'm still utterly confused. So my challenge to you is to say, surely for any of these decisions there has to be criteria. And what is your party's criteria for allocating community SIL? Does it include, as Tim just mentioned, a very clear link between where the money is raised and where the money is spent? And how can you ensure that these criteria are actually applied transparently and consistently? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to go to Peter first, and I'd like to just answer succinctly. So in terms of what Tim and Janice asked their pledges, would you support what they said?
Yeah. Yes, is the answer, and I absolutely. I mean, I get the concern that people have about SIL, and I know you, Amir, and Marion, and others in the Bankside Residents' Forum have brought this issue to us at cabinet meetings and raised your concerns. And I can only say, in a slightly weak way, that it's an evolving process. But I think we do have to get much better at this, quite frankly, in terms of bringing clarity to how SIL decisions are going to be taken, empowering local councillors and community councils to make those decisions, and areas to make those decisions, to ensure, just as you said, Janet, that the money which is realised is exactly as it should be spent in the area where that money was generated. So this is really not a difficult one. I do think, on a more general issue, that we do have to do much better on the question, just going back, because it really relates to Claire's question about planning decisions behind closed doors. I think we have to make sure that that is not the feeling that either communities or councillors have at all. And I think, you know, before the Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre application was considered by the Planning Committee in January, we had a Walworth Community Council meeting down at St Peter's Church, and it was a pretty, I mean, it was a full-on meeting, and you know, I think it was quite adversarial, I think it's fair to say. But what it did show, and what it did demonstrate, was the passion of both members and the public on that issue. And I think we do have to be cleverer about how do we make sure that we build in meetings perhaps of that nature, so that the public and councillors can express an advisory view on some of these big applications, so that, you know, before it ever gets to planning committee, there has been that public debate, there have been, you know, people have been able to express their views in a constructive way before things have become too entrenched. And I think that's really important to give our communities and our councillors confidence in the way in which we do planning across our borough. And I think that applies equally to SIL. So I've got no difficulty signing up to what both questions seek.
Thank you. President Lee, now, please.
Thanks very much. Peter, I'm interested to hear your answer, because that's not what's happening on the ground at all. I mean, in Bermondsey and Rotherhithe, firstly, decisions for the local SIL are officially to be made at Cabinet, and that I understand is your decision, so unless you've changed anything in the last 5 minutes, that's where the decisions about local SIL are formally made, and that's wrong. Those decisions should be made locally by local community councils. And the local SIL should be spent locally. It should be decided locally and spent locally. I mean, just for people who don't know, SIL, this community infrastructure levy, is the money given by developers to improve the infrastructure in an area where they are developing. And 70% of that goes into a borough-wide pot. So we're not being sort of greedy and territorial and saying it all has to be spent locally. We're saying, okay, 70% goes for the big infrastructure projects in the borough. But the 25% that should be spent locally, and the government says it should be spent locally, this council is defining local in a very odd way. In Bermondsey and Rotherhithe Community Council, it's 6 council wards, way too big to make community decisions. And in my ward, £400,000 has been generated by a development which has caused a lot of upset for residents. And we are being told by our chair that there's no guarantee at all. A single penny of it will be spent locally in our ward. So I think, Peter, you need to go and have a chat with your colleagues. I'm very pleased if you agree with the Liberal Democrat position that local sills should be spent locally and decided locally. And I think if we could all agree that tonight, we could go and get things changed tomorrow.
Toby, I'd just like to ask, do the questioners want to come back? Is there any points that they'd like to make? Yes, Janet.
Just very quickly, thank you very much for the positive noises. I hope that translates into positive action. I think on the transparency thing, it's just worth, I think, observing that Section 106 was the way not to go. That was something between the council and the developer. This really should be between the community and the community.
And I'd just like to add, if it is delivered locally by local agencies, they can match fund that with funds that the council can't access. So I take the example of the Morgan Sports Garden recently. It was in the old regime with Section 106, 150 grand worth of Section 106, and we have match funded it 3 times over to do the next phase. So councils can't really do that, but local delivery agents can. It makes the money go further, and it makes the local projects that people have decided on deliverable.
Thank you.
That last question has a specific case in mind, and I can't comment on it except to say that it's somewhat unusual for the disposition of Section 106 monies or SIL monies to be match funded by local communities. So there must be some special factor which I would be unwise to comment on. But the general point made by the other questioner about lack of transparency and accountability is extremely important. And I was doing a bit of thinking as the other people on the platform were answering. I think that there's a case in point here for a thorough review of Section 106 expenditure and accountability for it, and community infrastructure levy money as well. Now, to the best of my belief, these are derived from planning decisions. So the best structure would probably be to enlarge the powers of community councils over the oversight and accountability of both those streams of funding. So that meshes in with our wish to beef up the powers of the local community councils. So I think that would probably fit in, but I'd have to say I'm speculating. But clearly there is some grievance here which needs to be addressed urgently.
So thank you very much for those questions. It's really a green principle that decisions should be made at the lowest possible level. So this ties in very much to where the SIL decisions should be made. And the idea that Janet raised of a clear link between where the money is raised and where it's spent, of course, is very important. And I think we need to think about the community defining the criteria, not just following a list of criteria and deciding against it. And that means thinking about who that community is. And it is much wider than the people who might be able to come to a community council meeting at 7 p.m. on a dark night. We have to think about how we can enlarge the idea of the decision-making group who are looking at local decisions. We need to think about reaching out to where people are and talking about where the money is spent, at mother and baby groups, at pensioners' action groups, going out and saying what's important to you, help us define those criteria together. The point that Tim made about local agencies being employed to do the work, I think is also another part of that, and I'm thinking of Van Gogh Walk in Lambeth, where a local landscaper put in the most wonderful redesign of a space to make it...
If you could start, please.
Yep. Because they're local, they have local apprentices, they can pop by after work, they have a stake, they're there, it's part of their community and their world, so I think that's a very important point.
Now let's take two questions which are on a similar matter. So we've got Marion Margolies and a representative from the Old Bankside Neighbourhood Forum. So Marion, please.
Several local organisations, including the Bankside Residents Forum and the Walworth Society and Peckham Vision, are calling for the council to publish an official local list of otherwise undesignated heritage assets. Now, we note that the council did publish a draft list on the council website very recently, but the list is, in my view, disgracefully both incomplete and inaccurate. Just to take an example, in Cathedral's ward here, only the Blackfriars Road SPD has been included, and some of the buildings listed there are either already listed or, even worse, already demolished, thus highlighting the urgent need for this list to be compiled in a proper manner. So we are asking you to pledge that you will work with these local organisations and with local people who really in this context are the real experts to compile a comprehensive and meaningful list of undesignated assets, these lovely buildings that we all enjoy when we're not trying to when we're trying to get out of the way of the tall buildings, with the long-term goal of producing a heritage SPD for Southwark, which, after all, is one of the most historic of the London boroughs.
Okay, yes, I'd like to pursue some of the things that have been said by Peter, because obviously he's been responsible for what's been going on for some years. Sorry, is that not loud enough? I'd like to really try to nail down some of the answers that have been given in rather political stuff.
Can you just ask a specific question that you said?
That's exactly what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Taking it by reference to specifically one development that I have particular knowledge of, not least because I got a Freedom of Information response from the GLA on it today, which is the Capital House development or proposed Capital House development in Toby Street, in St Thomas Street. Now, there are a couple of specifics that could therefore be related to that. For example, there's been this comment that, and this picks up on what Anu said, is you've got a revolving door of developers, that the council is actually answerable to and compliant and complicit only with developers to the exclusion of local people. And so, I would like, and Peter says that this is not the case.
Your question, please, because I've got your question in front of you. Can you just get to your question, please? We don't have enough time.
There are a number that follow from it, so I'd like him to explain how it is, and the others, how they would bring about a rebalancing of the interests of local people and the developers, or whether they think that the current balance is correct. On social housing in that development, for example, there is the position adopted by the developers who had a sham meeting where they would answer no questions, even after it's obvious from the FOI response I have. It's all been stitched up in advance by the council and the GLA. That they can't have on-site social housing, the reason being is they can't accommodate enough entrances because they've got to have a museum, which is obviously a piece of window dressing. So, in response to both of those, will the panel each state what they would do? Would they accept such an excuse for not providing on-site social housing, or would they resist any such flimsy kind of denial of its viability? And then on the issue of high-rise in St Thomas Street, where it's said that there is a policy on high-rise buildings by Peter, explain whether he thinks it's policy compliant to insert a line of high-rise development sandwiched between some listed railway arches and a conservation area.
So there are 3 points there on which specific comments are invited as to the opinions and the position that the prospective leaders would adopt.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to go to Peter first, just to answer the heritage question, and then you've asked very specific questions. Now, what we're going to do with specific questions from the audience, we're going to have them published online, and the leaders can respond to them, because we didn't have enough time to go through specific questions and everyone to answer them. So if you answer it generally, and if you answer Marion's question, please.
Yeah, okay. Marion, I think we're well on the way to having a local list in Southwark. I think we're becoming one of the boroughs that doesn't have a local list, and you know that's not a tenable situation. And quite frankly, it has been a bit of a toing and froing between the professional planners and ourselves as politicians as to whether there should be a local list or not, and what added protection it gives. But I am personally persuaded there should be a local list, and I think we agree. And I think we will see that being brought into fruition. So I hope that will, yeah.
A local list, something that is compiled with the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and you know, I think whatever has been published is not something which is in response to a conscious decision which has yet been taken. So I think we've got a long way to go. So I wouldn't despair at what has yet been published. And Russell, on your issues, yeah, yes. But Russell, the joy of an election campaign is that there is a dialogue between politicians and the public, and sometimes our minds are changed and persuaded, and that's the joy of the election campaign we're having now. And just in terms of your question, I think you're talking about the development where the Migration Museum is proposed to go. Let me just be very clear. In terms of on-site affordable housing, very clear policy. It should be delivered on-site. That is the council's policy on the basis that Toby expressed earlier on. If for good reasons, and not just flimsy reasons, but very good reasons, it cannot be delivered on-site, then it has to be delivered by the developer off-site. And the third option, if it can't be delivered off-site, is we will take in-lieu payments. That is the policy. But for the vast majority of developments and new buildings in our borough, on-site affordable housing is delivered. That's the reality.
I feel bad. One of the problems with being leader of the opposition is it's such a negative title. I feel like I'm always being negative, but Peter, that's absolute nonsense. And that's a polite word for it. You deliberately allow developments to go through which are nowhere near planning policy. You supported the Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre development, where out of 979 new units, 33 were at social rents. I just had a quick word with the ward councillors before I came. In this ward, we've had 500 units at Ludgate and Sampson, 217 at Neo Bankside, 200, it's a very quick list, but it's proving the point about planning policy. I will do heritage. Go on, let me finish. 274 at 1 Blackfriars, 284 at 1 The Elephant, 421 at Skipton House, 173 at South Bank Tower. How many on-site social housing? Zero. Hundreds and hundreds in this ward, zero on-site social housing. So don't say stuff that isn't true, Peter. And this nonsense about if it's viable. Liberal Democrat councillors pushed for those viability assessments to be made public. It's a con, and if the council officers and councillors spent less time with developers and more time with residents, they would actually understand what was right for the community. We fully support a local heritage list. And my understanding of how the heritage list appeared was the Woolworth Society had demanded it, and suddenly the day before their meeting this list appeared on the website, which, as you say, was absolute nonsense. I mean, I think it does actually need to be taken seriously. I think once we get elections out of the way, we need to sit down as a community, because I would hope that people of all parties value the heritage of this borough. It's such a special place, and we need to do it with residents, and we would be absolutely committed to that. And thank you for the work you and others have done, Marion.
Please can you sit down? Please can you sit down? sit down, please? Could you sit down? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, it just shows, as Peter said, just before election, the combined activity of the amenity societies has produced a very good result. The trouble was that the poor officers were asked to cobble together a list of buildings very quickly, and they did so, published on the 29th of March, and obviously contained some rather humorous errors in it. It needs to be addressed, it will be addressed, all parties are in favour of it. The key is what legal powers a local list of heritage buildings will carry, and there's a linkage with the activities of the neighbourhood forums and eventually neighbourhood plans, which will have some statutory bearing on planning committee decisions.
And Eleanor, please.
Okay, I'll give a very short answer to the question about whether the developer's interest is currently given the right weighting in relation to local people's interests. No, it's not. On the local list, this was a question that was also raised at the hustings that were put together by Peckham Vision, and Toby and I were both in attendance there, which was an amazing gathering of local amenity groups who have been working so hard to make visible our heritage. And we were asked there not just to pledge to support the list, but what we would do to make it visible, to add to it, to enrich it, and make sure that the information really reflects the local texture. And I said then, and I will repeat my pledge now, that I, as a councillor, would like to lead or to accompany local people on walks around each of the areas to look at our local heritage and add to that list.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to estate demolition questions from, so we have a question from Andrew Harris, and I'll put that question with Eileen, no, this is from Joe, he's not here, and from Mark Brady, which is about demolition as well. So, Andrew first.
Great, thanks very much. I've lived in Southwark for 15 years, on the side of voter. So my question is, estate demolition schemes in the borough have frequently been rationalised on the basis of improving social mix, which means encouraging more middle-class people into historically deprived areas of Southwark, even if this means certain residents who live in these areas might have to move elsewhere. Now, given the emphasis here on the benefits of having a mix of different people in a neighbourhood, do the leaders here advocate extending this logic into the more affluent parts of the borough? If there are social mix policies to address the lack of class diversity, for example on the Haygate or Aylesbury estates, why not extend this to wealthy enclaves such as Dulwich Village or even here in Bankside?
Here.
It's about a different type of displacement. London now has an escalating shortage of space for its economy. Also, industrial enterprises are being hit the hardest. The Southwark plans, if adopted, would allow loss of around 3/4 of our borough's industrial accommodation. Clumsy handling of planning cases is accelerating the destruction, costing us jobs and economic diversity. Will you commit, if elected, to getting a grip on this problem, to aligning Southwark with the Mayor of London's strong new policy of no net loss of industrial floor space?
Thank you very much. So we'll go to Amir first, and if you just answer with a very, very short sentence on both of those questions. So in terms of the first question, Dulwich Village, Bankside and other affluent areas, would you support estate demolition and putting in a mix of housing?
So, thank you very much for both questions. And obviously we've talked a lot about regeneration, and I've made the point, but I'll make it again, about how special I think mixed communities are. I think that's what makes Southwark great. And my ward has Shad Thames, which lots of people see as the affluent bit, right next to the Dickens estate, which people may see as less affluent. And actually what's wonderful about the area, and what people love about the area, is that people come together. And one of the things I've always found really interesting as a ward councillor is one of the things that binds residents together, whether they're rich and poor or they've been around for 5 minutes or 50 years, is actually a love of the history of this borough and the heritage of it. And that, when I'm in a meeting and there's battles between different groups of residents, that's often what unites people, is that love of the heritage of this borough. And I think that links very neatly to Mark's question about the industrial heritage. I mean, as a councillor in Bermondsey, I'm incredibly proud of the fact that Bermondsey has always made stuff and produced stuff and had factories and warehouses and docks, and that history is something that we absolutely mustn't lose. We mustn't become a borough full of commuters into the city who can afford luxury flats and everyone else gets gradually pushed out, and that being residents or businesses. So I think it's really important. I've been to visit Mark's business on the Old Kent Road. You do great work. We don't want you to go anywhere. We absolutely need to commit to that, holding on to that industrial floor space that you've mentioned, and fully behind that. I don't know the answer to demolishing bits of Dulwich Village or Bankside. I suppose I'd like to be able to afford to live in them, but I think actually what we need to do is try and take some of the wealth and the good stuff in those areas, but actually it's not about trying to bring people, down. It's about trying to create mixed communities where actually people get along together and work together. So for me, segregating communities is not the answer in terms of what's being built newly, and I've given reasons why I think that's wrong. And I think anything we can do to promote mixed communities is a good thing.
Thank you very much. Toby.
Yes, mixed communities. One of the things that struck me as being pretty reprehensible in terms of the council's evidence of the public inquiry for the demolition of the Aylesbury estate was this desire to bring in mixed communities. The fact is that the Aylesbury estate at the moment consists of a marvellous diversity of both in terms of ethnicity and in terms of tenure. The owner-occupied properties are indistinguishable from the tenanted properties. You can't tell from somebody's front door whether you want an owner-occupier or a tenant. They all blend in well, and they don't want to leave their homes. So mixed communities has got to be used very carefully indeed to avoid stress, waste, and pretty good tragedy in terms of the Aylesbury. Was there another aspect? Yeah.
So would you support
the
the same policy that the Mayor of London has, no reduction in industrial space?
Not necessarily. I have to read it quite carefully. I think the emphasis should be on employment more broadly than industrial. But what I would support, I did a bit of research on Better Bankside's response to the draft New Southwark plan, well, the one that's going to examination in public later this year. And they use very careful language, but they do state the council should adopt a more robust framework when permitting loss of employment space in central activity zones, town centres, opportunity areas and site allocations. Now those four things do cover an extensive area, including the Old Kent Road area action, where I'm concerned that some of the existing businesses, mainly from the heavy retail stuff, will be lost. So that's employment opportunities being lost. So to that extent, if that's what the Mayor's policy says, I will fully endorse it. If the Mayor just talks about industrial employment, then I'm not quite sure whether I would.
Okay, thank you very much. Do the questioners want to add anything? And is there anyone else in the audience that would like to add comments? There's a hand up there, there's a hand there.
Hello, hello.
If you can be brief, please.
Well, yes, as brief as possible. I'm Piers Corbyn, a brother of, and as you all know, in this election, a lot of people are going to vote Jeremy Corbyn and get Peter John. So the question is really, is Peter John and his policies worthy of this? I.e. the policies of accountability, defending and building council housing, more than the numbers you develop, destroy rather, and not using the ones you're building as an enticement to get people out of development zones.
Question, please.
Question, please, yes. First of all, do you accept that your plans and dealings with developers actually are causing the housing crisis and social cleansing, not easing it? Well, that is one, but very specifically, ballots, we've got to have ballots. Do you respect the Aylesbury ballot? And will you allow estates to opt out of the Aylesbury Opportunity Social Cleansing Zone? Thank you.
There's some hands up. Sorry. There's some hands up in the front. If you could be brief with the question, please.
Felix Badu, I'm a leaseholder on the Aylesbury estate. The council and 3 leaseholders just ended 4-year CPO process and public inquiry last week. This inquiry involved 3 leaseholders who refused to vacate their properties when...
Question, please.
Is it economically viable or good business practice on the part of the council if it keeps 3 leaseholders in a block of 200 flats and another of 20 flats and refused to pay the leaseholders a fair market price, which will enable them to purchase like-for-like property in the local area?
Thank you very much. We'll go for Peter.
Thanks very much. Okay, well, going back to Andrew's original question, and I think it comes also into the points that Piers and Felix have raised as well. What I'm in favour of is the very best quality housing for all. And the estates you talk about, both Haygate and the Aylesbury, have had both structural and other difficulties there. And even now, despite carrying on investing in the heating at the Aylesbury, it regularly breaks down during winter months. I don't think that's acceptable. And as a landlord, I don't think Southwark Council should take pride in having housing which is cold during the winter. I'd rather that people will live in much better, much higher quality homes with reliable facilities. So housing that is not, as I say, of high quality is not something that I will support. I'm sorry. And now, the question that Mark asked, Mark, I think would be a difficulty with the Mayor of London if we didn't have plans that were compliant with the London plan in due course as this goes forward. But you know that the aspiration for the Old Kent Road is not to drive business out at all. It is to retain the business and the kind of business that we have there, and to explore ways in which we can deliver that new industrial space together with the housing that we and London need. And just as an aside, but a good example of ways in which this council is delivering new business opportunity space. Peckham Levels, Peckham multi-storey car park, not in use for very many years, but reopened by the council at the end of last year as Peckham Levels. Many businesses in there, local businesses in there now, taking advantage of trading facilities that are there. I think that is good news. We are being innovative as a council, taking advantage of the opportunities that are there, not driving business out, but bringing business in, creating the jobs our residents need. And that is why we as a council have been able to help more than 5,000 people into work and 2,000 into apprenticeships in the last 4 years.
Just to be specific, Peter, Mark's asked a question about loss of industrial floor space. Would your policy be to ensure that there is a re-provision of that floor space if it was to be moved around?
Yeah, absolutely, that's what we're looking to do, and that's what the plan looks to do. And of course, as I say, we're going to have to be consistent with the Mayor of London's plan in due course. There is something in what Toby says about ensuring that we continue to have employment in those areas, but we're more ambitious than that. We want to see 10,000 more jobs in the Old Kent Road, and I think we can see that delivered without difficulty. The kind of space that Mark operates in is the kind of space exactly that can be re-provided.
And on the specific question, I think Piers, about this, ballots. Is your policy to introduce ballots on
We have got a commitment in our manifesto for estate ballots, and Piers asked me the same question last week, and then I gave him the same answer. A very different question that was asked in the ballot. The question that was asked in the ballot of Aylesbury residents in 1999, I think it was, or where it was about a stock transfer out of council control. It's a very different question, I think, to estate regeneration. So I don't think it's a question that's relevant to, it's not a question which is relevant to what is going on at Aylesbury at this time.
And specifically, just on the ballot, so if it's your pledge and your manifesto, would you ensure that there isn't a sort of a rapid rush of regeneration schemes coming forward before a specific date that you're going to set?
I do not believe that that is likely to be the case at all. I can absolutely say honestly, no.
So I'll just answer briefly Mark's question about aligning with the London plan, which, as I said earlier, we are definitely in favour of that. We do not want to see a loss of net loss of industrial space. And it's wonderful to hear the Peckham levels being praised. That's a perfect example of an industrial space that the local community said, we want this space, we want to use it. They fought the council. Terrific, it's happening now, but it's great to see that it's being praised by Peter. On the question of whether we should think about improving the social mix, it's a great question that really exposes the problems behind this whole rationale. What we need to do, of course, is improve the conditions, the cultural opportunities, the income of existing residents. We don't want to just move people out and bring in a whole lot of other richer people instead. For the Aylesbury, there was a refurbishment plan that was drawn up by the council. It was never taken to planning. Something that I find very disturbing about this is the cost of litigation. Instead of offering those leaseholders a fair deal, we've gone through years and years of litigation rather than just offering them a price for their property that would allow them to stay in their community. And similarly, with viability assessments, which now are available for scrutiny, for those who can make any sense of the dark arts of viability assessments, Southwark Council spent thousands fighting making those available.
Just wanted to come back on the Aylesbury point because I think I said it earlier that the whole point of regeneration is it should benefit existing residents, and clearly something is going wrong where the council spent more time in legal wranglings with existing residents than actually supporting them. Felix mentioned the phrase like for like, and I think that's really important because residents are moving from the estate, not necessarily through their own choice or their own fault, and actually all they're saying is they want the equivalent to stay in the area. They're not asking for anything unreasonable. They want to be able to stay in the area that's home to them. And that like for like offer, I think, is something the council really needs to offer in order to allow existing residents to benefit from regeneration, but most importantly, just stay in the area that's home.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to a question from Maureen, please.
Yes, good evening. There's been dramatic cuts in youth services in Southwark and across London. We have seen a dramatic rise in youth violence and knife crime. What will you do to address this violence?
What will you do to give young people hope and deter them from their own path? There is a massive shortage in youth services, and this needs to be reversed. How will this be achieved? We need more community centres, not fragments of spaces which cannot accommodate the growing population and growing number of young people. We need more community centres and proper facilities across the borough. Would you support a state-of-the-art neighbourhood centre in Bankside and other areas in the borough where the population is growing? In Bankside, the current spaces and even the new facilities we have cannot accommodate the current population, which is set to grow massively in the next few years. And we are losing a generation of young people, boys and girls, to gangs. We need to set our own gangs up.
Thank you, Maureen. That's a really moving account of losing a generation to violence. And the cuts to youth services are coming through now. I mean, it's the impact over years of losing youth services. Sian Berry, who's a Green London Assembly member, has recently secured money from the Mayor across London for more youth services. So that's something that councillors can very clearly do, is to advocate with the Mayor and nationally for more funding for youth services. And a neighbourhood centre is a really important idea because that's, again, something that the council can do to support the excellent voluntary organisations that work with young people. Provide a space, support them logistically, and let them get on with their work with the young people that they know best.
Final mention on this. Does anybody from the audience want to add anything?
I'm a nurse. I work with people with severe and enduring mental illness. My job gets harder and harder every year. I have to send people to food banks. I also live in the Ledbury estate, with my family, and I'm being forced out of London. This is not Disney. Years of austerity is impacting on everyone's well-being. Inequality is bigger and bigger every year. And you're talking about young people when you're destroying communities. If you don't have health professionals living in the local area, knowing the current issues, to be able to do the intervention, the therapies, how can you provide therapy to someone when housing is not suitable, when they're living in horrible living conditions, when gang crime is rising? Yes, you can put more police officers in the street.
Can I ask you to take
So my question is, we need action now. Nurses need help, young people need help. The community is being very clear. It's very good in having good intentions, but we need houses now. We need professionals to stay in London. That's my question. What are you going to do? Because in the moment, I'm being forced out to Kent.
Well, on that specific question, we have our commitment in this manifesto to deliver 1,000 more council homes over the next 4 years and 1,000 London living rent homes over the next 4 years, and I'm confident we will do that by 2022. So it's our contribution to trying to solve the housing shortage. But you also raised some interesting issues which I do think link with Maureen's question, because you talk about mental health services, and some of the people who are most adversely impacted by the cuts to mental health services are young people. In our borough, 19% of young people who need mental health service help are the ones who get it at the moment. 19%. Now, if you can imagine any other area of medical help where only 19% of patients got the help that they needed, there would be an absolute national outcry. The NHS target nationally is to get that to 35%. I think we need to be far more ambitious in Southwark. That's why we're reviewing our children and adolescent mental health service spend, and if necessary, we'll put more money into it so that we absolutely set the standard in our borough for tackling mental health a crisis in our young people. And just on the point, we have invested in our libraries and our leisure centres to keep them open. We've invested in free swim and gym. We've invested money just down the road at Mint Street in a new centre there. It's why we have great facilities funded by the last Labour government, Salmon and down South Fisher youth centres in a Newt ward, and it's why we will be reopening the Youth Club for the Blue. So we are doing things. We do hear absolutely what people are saying. But remember, this is in the context where we have lost 40% of government grants since 2010. And Eleanor's absolutely right. We are feeling it now in our communities. And I do believe that people are saying enough of this Tory austerity. We have to invest in our future and obviously our young people and the services they receive.
Say feminist library! Say loving elephant! We need more, we need less space.
I just need to, I'll be back just a second.
Oh, this is me, I can talk forever. Thanks very much, Maureen, for the question. As I touched on earlier, it's something that we're very passionate about. And you could be reading the Liberal Democrat manifesto in terms of needing to invest in youth services, youth centres, mentoring and outreach. And I think it's really important as well that we're innovative about youth services and we think and actually engage with young people about what they want to see rather than think the council knows best, which sadly happens too often. In February 2016, so 2 years ago, the council proposed a budget. So the Labour administration put forward a budget, and then the Lib Dems, as the main opposition, amended it. And they proposed a 73% cut to youth services. They had done it with no consultation, no engagement with youth workers, with young people themselves. And as you can imagine, the opposition kicked up a bit of a fuss. And we managed a small success in that the cut went from 73% to 50%. So we faced a 50% cut in our youth services, not quite as bad as originally proposed, but still pretty devastating for our youth services. 1 month later, in March 2016, Labour councillors introduced increasing allowances for themselves. You may have seen it in Southwark News last week, the golden goodbye payoffs for cabinet members who decide voluntarily to resign with months' notice, getting 17 grand this summer. Those who don't get elected getting these big payoffs 1 month after they cut youth services in this borough by 50%. I said it's about choices, and we have an election where we need to hold councillors to account for the choices they have made over the last 4 years. By contrast, Liberal Democrats absolutely believe we need to invest in youth services. To mention Mint Street, something that the ward councillors here, particularly Adele, have really pushed to get going and refurbished and reopened. We absolutely need to invest in youth services, and I just hope that people look at our manifesto and see that the solutions there are about supporting young people, not penalising them and criminalising them.
I'm quite tempted actually just to hand that back to, for the question to be answered about how councillors do spend their money and the choice about the golden goodbye. Is that acceptable?
Yes, thanks. I think the questioner to my right was talking about nurses' accommodation, and I think that's been answered. If I misheard, then apologies. In terms of the youth services, we are in danger of being quite superficial about what I think is a really serious problem in terms of violence. Youth on youth, young men in their 20s killing other young men. Probably because they think they can get away with it, or when they do their own balance of advantage, the profits from the activities which those vicious people, are engaged in are quite high.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Peter, if you'd like to answer would you like to reply to what Nina said?
Well, I mean, I think the only observation I'd make is that these are theoretical figures at this present time. Nobody's actually received or taken any money out. So let's come and have the debate as and when that happens, because I think the news has been predicting that thousands of pounds are going to be going to cabinet members over the last 3 years, and nothing has. But I do think there is a point about, you know, and something which I do support, is that you do, when you're asking people, as you have in Southwark, young people of working age, to give up careers, to give up pensions, to give up the benefits that come with a normal regular job, to become a councillor and a cabinet member, that you do have some security that other jobs provide. And I don't think that's a bad thing to do. I think, you know, in other walks of life, we'd be outraged if people were dealt with in an inappropriate manner when they ended their work. So this is all a bit theoretical at the present time. Let's have the debate when actually money goes out the door.
If I can ask Naomi and I believe Ralph, also they have a similar question. So if Naomi, if you ask the first of your 3 questions, please. Is Naomi here? No. Ralph? Ralph, please.
Thank you very much. My question is about Southwark's record since 2014 on its streets, or streets of shame, because earlier this year, figures came out showing that air pollution, accidents, bus delays, congestion had all shot up since 2014. What policies will the candidates put in place to cut motor traffic if they're elected? And this is all the more relevant because the new mayor's transport strategy says that boroughs won't get extra cash unless they do this, and Southwark's already lost out in its first bid for Woolworth. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll go to Eleanor first, and you have a minute and a half, please.
Thank you. That's a really important question. I mean, I brought along a copy of the Delivering Southwark's Transport Plan with me, which shows that Southwark is failing on so many of its criteria for air pollution, for obesity. 10 to 11-year-olds, 43% are overweight. So addressing what's wrong with our streets addresses a whole raft of other problems. Bringing down the levels of motor traffic has to be done through a combination of measures. I'm not going to sit here and say, I've got a magic bullet. It's got lots of different things happening. It's got to feel safe and inviting to walk and cycle, and at the moment, it's not. It's not, doesn't feel safe to go for a cycle ride with an 8-year-old from my home. We've got to change that, and we can do it. We've got to invest in ways of taking motor traffic off the road. For example, in consolidation centres, Southwark opted out of the zero emissions network, which would take off white van deliveries from our areas and replace them with pedicab deliveries. That's just 2 ideas. We need 20 ideas. We have got them if we have more time to tell you.
I've already dealt with part of the answer, and that is the need for a more balanced highway policy to avoid pollution from traffic waiting in long queues, backed up, virtually all of them with their engines running. We could reduce pollution if we adopted a more balanced approach, in my opinion. And those backups are also diminishing bus use. One of the worrying things is that the usage of buses in the last year or so has gone down, and that's because people don't want to sit in a queue in a bus. The bus lanes are often blocked, so the buses have to sit in the same queue as everybody else, which can be caused by excessive and unbalanced highway management. So that's one factor. Another factor, and I'm interested to see that we share this with the Labour manifesto, and that is use of our lampposts to provide electric charging points. I think it's going to be a steep learning curve on this, but it's in our Conservative manifesto locally for this election, and I notice it's also in Peter John's manifesto, which is now looking at. So full support in our two parties for exploring the use of lampposts to provide electric charging points. It would be very unpopular if people then aren't allowed to park their cars nearby, and also they need to pay for the electricity which they are extracting from the lampposts. So there's a lot of technology required here, but let's move it on.
Thank you. We'll take one question from the audience. I see someone put their hand up. Oh. I'll come to Peter.
Yes, a very simple question, and it just needs a yes-no answer. If the proposals for dealing with the busking problem on Bankside do not work, as I fairly confidently predict they won't, would you be prepared to consider a suggestion of one of the more desperate residents of Falcon Point? I used to work in mental health, and I'm really concerned about the mental health of some of the people who live in Falcon Point. And I think it may not be long before you get your first suicide attempt if this goes on.
If you can get your question or comment,
would you consider the suggestion of one resident there that you should turn the whole area into not a busking zone but an art zone? You have a Tate Modern there. If you turn this into London's first art zone, you could get people there painting quietly. There's plenty to paint, St Paul's Cathedral and so forth.
Okay, I think we get the question. Thank you, Colin. Thank you. What I'll do first is if you can answer Ralph's question, and then if you just say yes or no on Colin's question.
Well, on Colin's question, as I say, I think we've got to look at the review, Colin. I think it would be wrong for us to preempt the decisions that are taken, and let's see what goes from that. And on Ralph's question, I don't recognise that our streets are streets of shame. You know, we have seen a significant increase in the number of people who are walking and cycling in our borough. In fact, we exceeded the council's own internal target on both those measures. Is there more we can do? Of course there is. We all want to see much cleaner air in our city, and there is no one who is a keener advocate, obviously, than Sadiq Khan on this issue. And we are very keen to work with him to deliver his ambitions to ensure better air quality in our city, to ensure that more people are walking and cycling, and we'll work to help him deliver that. And I think Southwark has a good record in this regard. We have made it easier for people to keep bikes, more cycle hangers on our streets and on our estates. So it's not a record of shame that I recognise at all. I think we're making positive progress and absolutely committed to the agenda which you so clearly feel passionately about too.
Thanks very much. We've talked a lot about development this evening, and of course one of the impacts of so much development in the borough is an impact on our infrastructure, and I think we can all see it in terms of, I mean, Jamaica Road in my ward, I think traffic's up 19% this year. You can breathe that literally every day as you walk along. It's one of the most gridlocked roads in the country. So development clearly has an impact on infrastructure, and the only answer to that is green infrastructure, to actually creating ways of dealing with the pressures on our transport network. A few things that we've been campaigning about. Firstly, to save the RV1 bus service, which runs very locally to here, and it's an absolute scandal that the Mayor has cut the service, given how well loved it was, and given it was on diversion for so long that you couldn't possibly base any evidence on passenger counts. And Victor Chamberlain, who's one of our Liberal Democrat candidates in this ward, has led a campaign, got 1,000 petition signatures. Sign it, please, if you haven't already. It's a really, really important campaign for this community and everyone who stretches along the river. The other big infrastructure projects that we've been campaigning for many years, a tube station for Bricklayers Arms to extend the Bakerloo line, a walking and cycling bridge from Rotherhithe to Canary Wharf, extending the bike hire scheme. Bermondsey and Rotherhithe and Morworth and Camberwell and Dulwich don't get it. Brixton, Lambeth Council paid for it. We have to extend the bike hire scheme. And then just finally, road safety. Actual traffic calming on residential streets makes a huge difference, and it's so important.
Thank you very much. We're going to take one last question from Paola, and then we'll have to, I know there's lots of hands up in the audience, but sorry, we'll have to finish roughly on time. So if we take the question from Paola, please.
Peter, I'm obviously concerned for those who aren't familiar with the campaign. We're a group of local parents who've been campaigning for a new set. Can you hear me? All right. I represent a group of local parents who've been some time for a new secondary school to be built with
If you could get to the question,
fire station. Fine. Peter, we know that you have made a firm commitment to open the new haberdasher school by September 2019 as one of your major election pledges. It's inevitable that there are going to be problems and challenges along the way. What we wish to know is that whatever the composition of the council in the future, it will remain fully committed to putting its full energies and leadership into confronting these head-on. In particular, we want to guarantee that you'll make sure the school and community sports facilities don't overrun and miss their opening target or suffer any funding shortages. Can you do that?
Thank you very much. I think what we'll do is link this question to Claire's earlier question, actually, talking about decisions being made behind closed doors and how sometimes planning decisions overrun and all that sort of stuff. So if you can answer it on that basis, and I know some of you have in your pledges talk about consultation and how you can improve consultation, and if you can talk a little bit about that. So, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I think Paola's question is slightly different, actually. I mean, actually, this is a school which has planning consent, which is going to be built, and which we are determined to see delivered by September 2019. And, you know, my colleague Vicky Mills, who leads on children in schools as cabinet member, has absolutely been driving this through, you know, right through the planning process. And insofar as it's within our control, Paola, that we will ensure that things are delivered on time. We've got a good record, actually, of investing in our schools in Southwark, and as somebody who's been, as a council, overseeing the delivery of new schools, Charter East Dulwich, I think is absolutely on time down there on the old Dulwich Hospital site, and this is another school where I hope we'll be involved as the council delivering the school element of this. So, insofar as, you know, there are any certainties in life, you know, I do give you an absolute pledge that this school will be open in accordance with the manifesto commitment that we have given. And I think it will be an incredibly popular school. I think it will be a great asset for our area, as are indeed the great schools that we have up and down our borough, where we see year in, year out results improve. And that is something which I would hope we can all be incredibly proud of. The teachers, the students who produce those great results in our great schools.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say congratulations to the parents for running an excellent campaign to get a new school in your community, and to have Haberdasher Asks as the provider, I think, is really important. I know the ward councillors have worked really hard with writing to the mayor and convening meetings with the Fire Brigade Authority about the land, and I think it's great. It's been a cross-party campaign, and it's nice to agree with Peter about something. So whoever, I mean, the elections in Southwark tend to be between Labour and the Liberal Democrats, who are the two main parties, and whichever of those two is in control, certainly there's a commitment to that new school. I think the other commitment that's really important that we mustn't lose sight of is the sports facility and the open space is available for the community when it's not being used by the school at an affordable rate. And I know we could spend a long time talking about what affordable means, but it's really important that we have that commitment from all parties as well. But seriously, well done, and I really look forward to it opening in September 2019.
I second Anoud's congratulations to the team that brought the school where it's desperately needed. I just wanted to pick up the question that you drew back to Claire's question about planning behind closed doors, and how that relates to Southwark Council's record, or very poor record, on making streets more habitable, healthy. We have a number of car-free developments. This connects back to planning. The council is not holding developers to account where a car-free development is promised. I can think of an example in Camberwell, in the ward where I'm standing, where it was admitted in a council document earlier this year that through an administrative error, this proposed car-free development was going to allow residents to have cars. Unless we hold developers to account, we're not going to get any results.
Hold on. Yeah.
Please can you sit down? you sit down, please? Could you sit down, please? Thank you very much.
We all hope that the new haberdashers school in the old fire station headquarters is opened just as soon as possible. September 2019 is quite a tight timescale. I very much hope it opens. Just one very minor political point I have to say. PTS, of course, standards have improved, educational standards have improved in the borough, and it's a great achievement. But I have to say that some people look a bit further to the left in the education spectrum and the political spectrum, rubbish the idea of academies, which was advanced by the Blair government and supported very much by the current governments and David Cameron coalition, etc. It's the advent of the academies which, among other factors, has achieved that very good result.
Now we'll go on to something your thoughts, your final thoughts, and we will start with Eleanor.
At the moment, there are no Green councillors on Southwark Council. The Electoral Reform Society says that voters get a poor deal in single state, one-party state councils. There's less scrutiny of contracts and budgets. In fact, residents lose out to the tune of about £2.6 billion a year. Greens will lobby for you in the London Assembly. We in Southwark gathered 500 signatures for a petition to the Mayor to clean up dirty diesel buses. Green Assembly member Sian Berry has secured extra funds for youth services and will take practical action. I helped parents to plant a living ivy screen around Goose Green School as a shield against noise and air pollution.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Above all, we want Southwark Council to use its powers to improve transport, housing and health. And if you want to see things change in Southwark, you need to change what you do too, and vote for an independent voice, and vote Green.
For a great evening and some really interesting debates, and certainly it's clear to me that if we want to create a city that actually works for everyone, if we want a borough that really tackles some of the challenges around inequality and poverty and crime, we need some radical solutions. We don't need the same old council that's been here for 8 years and is frankly running out of ideas. We need radical solutions on housing. We need to get those empty homes back in use. We need affordable homes based on incomes, not markets. And we need to stop selling off council homes. We need radical solutions for crime, extra police officers, investment in youth services, and we need radical solutions in terms of the environment. We need those big green infrastructure projects I mentioned. We need solar panels, we need electric car charging points, we need money back for recycling. We need a creative city, a city that's innovative, trying new things. We need a liberal London.
Well, we certainly need to preserve.
Please be quiet.
We need to preserve our diversity, which I think applies to the membership of Southwark Borough Council, which you all got votes for on the 3rd of May. We also discussed important issues of governance, transparency and accountability, particularly in terms of planning and broader expenditure. If I have any influence at all, and our party has any influence at all, which I hope it does, then we'll certainly be concentrating on that, as well as the devolution of powers, community councils and labour reforms.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Amir. Well, I think, the range of issues that we discussed tonight just underlines, doesn't it, how important local government is, not just in Southwark, but anywhere in our country. And what I think is really important is, I'm probably preaching converted here, but do go out and vote on the 3rd of May.